Working hard on my stump, what's the problem? I ain't had shit to show, being modest. Now it's grams of the wax in my conscience. Bron James in LA, you're on college. I've been jumping on them planes like a hobby. Still moving with the pack like my partners. Shut the John on them jets cause we wildin'. But the bowl is a party on the island, moment of silence. So good, get back to the topic. Grew up, it was me and Flocka. Grandma's and Big T, this my mama. I ain't even for the pain when my pots flipped. Knew his name, that's it, never bothered. Mom said, you the man, son, you got this. Ever since I found a way to go and pop shit. Hold up, blaze through a whole zip. Took a seat at the table of my first flip. Days in red roof with my first whip. Spent the money with the gang, never post pics. Seen a change in the game, had to coach it. Never let them take my wangs in the mold, bitch. Ever made in a month, nigga. Used to serve him at the minute just to flunk.
All right. Welcome, everybody. We are chilling out with my main man, Cliff, here. Yeah, we just have about 30 minutes together. We're mostly just making sure everything works. We're both in the we're in the virtual evolution lab, guys. So it's pretty sweet. It's connected to Flying Man University, but I haven't really connected it yet. Cliff is going to show us some stuff here. I'm going to show him Robert Reed, and we're just going to chit chat for about 30 minutes, and then I'll be back later after my meeting with Mike Travisano. Go ahead, Cliff, take it away, bro. Oh, Cliff, by the way, thanks for joining me, and go ahead, take it away.
So first in other news, I just remembered. I gotta look it up. Take me a second. There's a guy going to be at MSU next week by the name of David Berlinski, and he's a mathematician and philosopher at Cal Berkeley, and he's going to be talking about suspicion about Darwin's theory. So basically, he's going to be at MSU. He's invited by the
a student group.
Yeah, it's like the One Nation Church or whatever. It's some
Lord.
Thing. So yeah, they're
Lord.
7 p.m. September 29th. I'm probably going to be on campus for this stupidity.
So you're gonna go chill with the anti-vaxxers. You're gonna go chill with the anti-vaxxers for the
I'm gonna
the anti-Darwin,
like tightly around my face, and I'm gonna take notes, and then I'm gonna be like my fallback question is gonna be like, let's just say you're right. If you're right, then what you're proposing is that God did it, and we just have to accept that. And there's no way that we could possibly like research this or advance in any way. There's nothing we could do. We just have to accept it. Or those of us who are actually doing science could, keep doing science.
Exactly. Cliff, I'm gonna step away.
It'll come out. Like it'll come out in the wash if we're wrong, and that's fine.
Cliff, give me 1 sec because I gotta grab a lighter. I forgot. Moron.
Yeah.
I am a moron. All right. Also, shout out to Cameron Bennett for being first. Cameron, appreciate you as always. Remind me later, Cameron, and actually I can hook you up with some pocket change right now. Appreciate you, Cameron. But yeah, Cliff, where do you think that goes for them? Because I've, you know what, that seems to be like right up the alley of sort of my conversation with Ken Hovind, right? Where I could just go, you know what, you're right. So what now? Do we just throw in the towel? Do we just quit doing science? What do you think they really say?
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing in my mind. There's nothing to be gained from except because look, it's candidate hypothesis. Like you got you have a hypothesis. God done it. All right, great. How do I test it? What do I do with that? What predictions does that make for me? Nothing. I got nothing. So okay, great. We're done. Like, hang up your hat. We're done.
We're done.
Or, we can keep doing science and keep figuring stuff out. And you know what? If God's the answer, we'll get there. Just chill. We'll get there.
Yes, that's Cliff. Sorry, you probably can't. I can make him bigger for you. Boom. But yeah, that's Cliff. Cliff and I are just chilling. We got about 30 minutes. We're just chit chatting. Cliff, I think this is the type of conversation that needs to be had in our community, to be honest with you. I had a productive conversation with the young earth creationist named Rebecca, who, by the way, might be no longer creating content soon because I think of some of the pushback she's got in our community. So that's an interesting thing to discuss with you, too. But I sort of had this conversation with her where, one, I had said to her that she was incredibly disrespectful to our entire field, right? That that it was personal. I titled that stream, I Can't Keep My Cool with Young Earth Creationists, right? And what I explain to people is you as an atheist or a skeptic on the internet who's a big fan of evolution, thinks it's a huge part of science, you might be able to just keep your cool with young earth creationists and just say, hey, you guys should really accept this evolution thing. But to me, they're saying that my life's work and that of all my close friends and colleagues should just be thrown out the fucking window like it doesn't exist. And I find that incredibly insulting. And so she came on and she talked to me, and I kind of like tried to meet her in the middle, and I said, I'm sure you would say that you currently don't accept evolution. Nevertheless, you would say a scientist like me, especially an evolutionary biologist who's trying to make the case for evolution, should keep doing my research, right? Like I said to her, it's my job to go get more evidence to convince people like you eventually, right? She should be convinced already, but eventually, right, that this is, and she said yes, right? She said, yeah, I don't think you're a bad person. I think scientists are good. You guys should continue to do the research. I'm just not convinced yet. Totally crazy, but what we're drawing here is there's a difference between that, right, and the person who wants to say, God done it, now just throw your hands up, praise, amen, hallelujah, and there's no reason to even do science anymore because the Bible is the science now.
I have a nibbling, and they were doing physics for a while, but they're doing their masters, and they're doing math, they're doing topology. But for a while they were doing physics, and they thought they might want to get into particle physics. And we had this back and forth about what is the right quantum model that one should be working with right now. And I said, okay, there's a Copenhagen interpretation. You talk to most physicists who study this stuff, and they say, yeah, we think that this is the good model. This gives us good prediction, but it's not complete. It's not like as complete as evolution. Right? It's got big holes. And there are other competing theories that are more complex but equally predictive. And so for me, like that's kind of where I'm at is like, I look at that and I say, well, I don't, it's not that I doubt the Copenhagen interpretation for quantum mechanics. It's that I don't accept it. I accept that it's probably a good model and it's probably highly predictive, but I don't accept it. And so if a physicist is going to lose their cool on me because I'm not willing to accept the current best model,
right.
That's on them. I'm not saying I'm denying. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Right.
So if somebody says, look, I think that there are holes in this evolution thing, I can say, I work on this stuff, and every time that I have looked into, I do my own research, I can tell you for certain that you can get complexity from randomness and selection. Like that, I can tell you without a doubt, because that's what I work on. In terms of human evolution, in terms of, stuff with actual DNA, I don't work with that stuff. But anytime that somebody's brought something up and I've gone and read papers, I know how to read papers, I know how to look at citations, it has never panned out the way that they, the way that they're arguing it. It was just, I was listening, I don't know, I wish I could remember who was talking about it. I was just listening to somebody who was talking about how there was some new paper that came up, and it said that that evolution is not random. And the thing was that the authors of the paper were not saying it wasn't random. What they were saying is there are differential rates of mutation at different points in the genome, and we now have evidence that evolution, natural selection, can actually leverage that. So it can put critical function in safe parts of the genome, or it can add markers to the genome that'll make certain areas less likely to mutate.
Yeah, right.
And,
and you're
like, yeah, okay, so that means that, yes. So they're not saying that mutations are not random. What they're saying is that they're not perfectly random. They're still random. It's just that you could lower or increase the mutation rate.
Or we have hypermutators, right, in the LNCA lines.
Exactly.
So that's
and so like that doesn't actually disprove evolution. That's a wrinkle. That's fine.
Right.
But again, if somebody says, look, I don't know if I accept it. Like I've seen the evidence. It looks,
shaky.
But when somebody says there's no evidence, you're like, well, I don't know what to do with you. That's when I sort of lose
it. So that was this point.
There are also certain things that people can say which are so wrong that it's going to take so much time to unpack that it's frustrating.
Right.
Because you're like, dude, because you just said what you said, we're going to have to spend I have to go back to remedial,
Well, yeah, I've literally, people have seen this now. I've started recommending the Carl Zimmer textbook. I've gotten to certain points with people, and I've just said, look, if you're not even going to, and you wouldn't say this to a casual person in the audience who just isn't sitting on some anti-denial bullshit, but if somebody's that far anti-science, you got to say, look, you got to get through this textbook and show me you understand what's in it, right? Because you're so far gone that I'm sorry. The only way I can continue with you in good faith is to be honest, you got to increase your formal education. I'm sorry. You just don't, it's like I'm trying to, look, Cliff, I can't fix a car for shit. I don't even know how the car works, right?
Right.
But do I need to read an auto mechanics manual? No. Why? Because I take my car to the shop, and when he says you have an issue with your transmission, I go, I don't know dick about a transmission. Please fix my transmission, right? But when he tells me there's a problem with the transmission, and I start going, no, it's a problem with the carburetor, it's a problem with the engine, and he goes, well, can you show me where the carburetor and the engine are? And I go, isn't that engine that big thing in the block? Right? It's like he's gonna realize you failed the shit test, right? Go away. Right? Come back. You're welcome to have this conversation with me, but go back when you know what the transmission does versus the carburetor versus the engine. Right? And that's what we're saying with people. You get to a point where it's like, you don't understand enough for me to even have this conversation with you. But here's what's interesting. I think Michael Shermer, we were watching a video over the weekend about anti-science in America, and this point made was incredible. He made this incredible point about how scientists just don't have the time. The real experts are just too busy, and they just don't have the time to address these claims. And then on top of that, he pointed out that the claims aren't even really related to the science. They're just pegged on to the science. I said the same thing. When people first started asking me about things like zinc fingers and ERVs, I didn't give them some long-winded explanation about the biology. I said, look, I just spent, a decade working for some of the best scientists in evolution, and these terms came up exactly 0 times.
Well, and look, I mean, that's the Saul thing, his zinc fingers thing, and you look into it, and at first you go, oh, I haven't heard this before, and it's got a lot of big words. And then you spend literally, I don't know, I spent
2 minutes. 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes, yeah, just Google it.
10 minutes so I could actually pull up a paper or two.
Right.
And you're like, this is massively complex. You are grossly oversimplifying it, and it's not a big deal.
Right. It's nothing. It's just another piece of evidence for evolution. But his point was this. So he says there's a couple things going on. One, that experts are too busy, right? 2, these sort of counter people, they're just making up these things that aren't even, the scientists wouldn't even know, right? They don't even know what that means when you say these terms to them. And then, on top of that, they go straight to the people. And that was the point you brought up about when people say things like there's no evidence. Part of their anti-science, anti-truth thing that they brought up was even back during when you had a debate over slavery, right? Should have never been a debate about whether or not you should own people. But there was, right? Some people going, you got to stop this. Other people going, sorry, it's too important to the economy. Sound familiar? Right? And then, but there was never anybody going, what slaves? Slaves? Nobody's in slavery, right? We're in that phase now, which is, to your point, totally different, right? There is no evidence for evolution. We're not in it's not sufficient, or I don't accept it, or it's of a bad nature. I'm going to deny it. Go ahead.
I've heard people on the other side saying there's no evolution, there's no evidence for God done it. And I'm like, of course there is. Look at not to go back to it, but look at the trees.
Yeah.
There's your evidence. Okay, fine. So that's also evidence for evolution, though.
Right.
Well, let's do this. you know what? You can't actually know the truth, like philosophically, you can't know capital T truth kind of guy. But so the thing is, you got these two hypotheses. God made the tree and evolution made the tree. One of them we can test and the other one we can't. So therefore I have no evidence for the God done it. Right. I have no evidence. I have no testable evidence. I should say I have evidence. The tree exists, right? That the existence of the tree is the evidence.
Right.
Or something, right? And so, okay, so I need hypotheses. So now I got two. I got a million hypotheses. Everyone's got a hypothesis. They're like assholes. Everyone's got one, and they all stink.
Right. Yeah.
You gotta test them, right? Like that's the thing. You gotta test it, and then when you test it, that's when it stops stinking. But if you can't test it, it's just a stinking hypothesis. Throw it on the pile.
Yes. And so I think one of the things that you and I can bring to a space like this is that we are the actual scientists. We are willing to take the time to engage these people, you know, at times.
And you're more than me.
But you're talking about it, though. You're talking about, you know, you're thinking about it.
Segue to science. So we met with Mike on Friday. I want to show you these results.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, guys. So segue, we're talking about cultural evolution and how we can study cultural evolution using our digital organisms. And the thing that I think is incredible about this is it just shows why I got so into virtual evolution once I started to connect the dots, because this is stuff that would be really difficult to study in microbes, and just the breadth of questions, just like the breadth of questions that we can attack with the digital system is unbelievable. But yeah, go ahead, Cliff.
So this will be a little bit of dry run to explain the system to you, and then we can work out any questions you have, and you can get a sense for like what kind of results it generates. So what's going on in the system? I've got this screen up here, and I've got these three. It's really small. I'll zoom in on it, but I have these three plots showing these phylogenies, which is just a family tree. And on the left, we've got. I'm going to zoom in and see what the heck we got. Let's see if I can. There we go. On the left, we have dogs. And on the right, we got cats. So let's see. Let's go back there. So this is on the left here. This is the dog phylogeny. On the right is the cat phylogeny, and then in the middle is the cat phylogeny. On the right is the fleas. And so what we're modeling.
Wait, left dogs, middle cats, right fleas.
Yep.
And we're modeling, guys. There's like it's just like you think, right? There are fleas on the dogs and cats, right? Yep. And they're parasites, just like you would think.
There's a population of dogs, there's a population of cats, and they move around kind of at random. And then there are fleas, and basically every dog and every cat has a little mini population of fleas. And the fleas, the dogs and cats, they just get resource. It doesn't matter. But the fleas can suck up some of the resource from their host if their genomes match the host genome. Oh, the fleas take, so it's kind of like a key lock thing, but if the fleas have the key, they can actually, drain protein from the dog or some shit like that. Literally in the code, it's described as a lock and key. I use bit strings, but it's a lock and key model.
Okay, got you.
And so basically, the better a parasite matches its host, the more resource it steals from the host. And it can actually steal enough resource that it slows down the reproduction rate on the host.
Got you.
But what happens is, and we start out with all the dogs and all the cats having the same exact lock. So in the case of the bit string, they're all ones. And then in the fleas, they start out with random genomes. So it's just random bits. And then we start running it. And if I zoom over here on the right, what you see is these two different colors. Now, red indicates that the flea lived on a cat, and blue indicates that the flea lived on a dog. There's a certain rate of transmission where fleas will jump from cat to cat or from dog to dog, and there's a lower, it's about half the rate of transmission of a flea to jump from a cat to a dog or from a dog to a cat.
Right.
And so they can go from one to the other and back and forth. What happens is that pretty early on, initially you can see they're going back and forth. There's like this, there's a flea, and then the offspring of this is showing every 1,000 generations. So this is showing a prune phylogeny. There's something on the order of, I can tell you exactly how many. there was something on the populations of hosts are between 200 and 700.
So this is like so we're skipping a lot of generations here.
Yeah, and this is pruned. The phylogeny is pruned, right? These populations of fleas are in like the tens of thousands. But basically, if someone shows up here, what it means is that that individual still had surviving progeny after 1,000 generations.
Oh, so these are the winners.
This is like the winners. And this is like, if you go to any one point and you go back, that's the line of descent.
I got you.
But we get to see this is like, I call this a pruned phylogeny because it shows dead ends where like you can see like this lineage went extinct.
Got
right?
you.
Like there was a lineage here. They lived for like, this lineage had a most recent common ancestor with this, lineage.
Yeah.
And it survived for 4,000 generations and then went extinct.
Yeah.
But this lineage, it has survived like for 20,000 generations and then it went extinct.
So it's like kings or something, but we skipped a few begets. We don't show all the begets.
We skip 1,000 begets.
We skipped 1,000 begets. There we go.
And then we only show if you have a beget in the next after 1,000. If you don't have
if you don't have a beget, you don't even make it into the chapter.
We don't show you because you didn't have a phylogeny. We don't care. So what you can see here is that like early on, the fleas are jumping back and forth between the cats and the dogs. The phylogeny are jumping back and forth. But at a certain point, the fleas become specialized. And there's a phylogeny that's just on dogs, and there's a phylogeny that's just on cats. It's not that they're not jumping back and forth. You can see this pink right here.
Mm-hmm.
It happened to be that a dog flea jumped on a cat.
Oh, yeah, you can see that transition. Yes, yeah.
And it died. It couldn't survive because it wasn't suited to the cat.
Oh,
right?
That was the dead end. The jump was the dead end. That was it. Fateful jump.
Now we see that here, there's like the phylogeny for cats. Like at this generation, there's some fleas, some dog fleas, and there's some cat fleas. Then suddenly there's no more dog fleas. There are only cat fleas for another 2,000 generations. And then there's no more cat fleas even. The fleas went extinct.
Oh.
They couldn't keep up. The hosts got away from the fleas and they evolved away from the fleas and the fleas lost.
People think I'm joking when I tell people when I work with Avita Ed, I'm always happy to get that bad student that just wants to kill everything. And I go, yeah, just knock yourself out. Try to make everything go extinct. And thanks for demonstrating that we're into that. Who cares? It's life. Everything dies.
Check this out. Here's where it gets good. So here's the phylogeny over here on the left. Sorry, I had it wrong. Over here on the left is the cats, and on the right is the dogs.
Oh, holy shit.
Notice that, sorry, I'm sorry. These are the dogs, these are cats.
Right.
Notice cats go extinct right here, and the dogs go extinct 2,000 generations before that right here. Well, look what happens to the phylogenies.
They're explode.
Really tight. They explode. Why? Because the pressure from the fleas is gone because the fleas are extinct, and you get an explosion in the phylogenies. There's no more selective pressure to maintain a certain genotype, and so they just go crazy. So there you go. Evolution in action, coevolution, host, parasite, coevolution. So I can show you one more.
This is beautiful. Hang on, though. Do you know what else this shows me, though? Stephen Jay Gould, right? In fucking Wonderful Life, right? So his whole thing is about contingency is like, if he always said if you went back to the Burgess Shale, blah, 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 you'd have potentially a lot more survivors. And his whole argument was that you'd get this broader tree of life, like this sort of broad branching bush thing. And then he thinks what happened incidentally was we got the thing you see early on, the narrow thing. And so only, like we're the descendants of like 3 or 4 branches of animals, right? Instead of like 18. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So this is an interesting thing that the phylogenetic nerds might get into. We don't know how to talk to them yet, but if we figure it out, they might be into it because this shows a pressure that actually, gives you some ecology to narrow versus broad phylogenies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's super simple, right? It's a fucking parasite between cats and dogs. I mean, or obviously it's a model, but you know what I mean, right? It's like super simple, but you get this like boom, like undeniable result. Super clean, man. That's amazing. Sorry, you said there was something else.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that in there.
One more bit. I just got to look up the time here. So it's 17,000. So I'm going to go 16,000. 16,000. 16,000 is just before just before the cats lost their fleas. So if we look at that, and then we look at the dogs. All right, so what I'm going to show you now is the little window.
No, Vandalia, this is just a model of digital organisms. So cats and dogs are just labels that we use to help us.
No cats.
They're just they're just two different types of hosts. But yeah, these are all just they're virtual organisms.
So this is all that exists in the host. There's they have this string here. This is it. They got 20 numbers, 20 bits.
Yeah, that's a cat or a dog. It's just a string of numbers. Yeah.
This is this is a cat. These are cats up here, and these are dogs down here. The thing I want you to notice is when these started out, if I go to I'm looking at generation 16,000. If I go to generation 0, they're all ones. All the cats and all the dogs were all ones.
Okay.
But the thing to look at is, look, the dogs all start out with a bunch of ones, and the cats all start out with a bunch of zeros.
Right.
The cats all have a bunch of ones right here, and the dogs, for the most part, have a bunch of zeros there. So they're differentiating. This is where they're differentiating. This is why the fleas have to differentiate. So now if we looked at the dogs and the cats, now if we look at the fleas for 16,000.
Oh, they made it so that you can't be both.
Yeah, if you look at the fleas, there are some fleas that look like this. So let me go up a little higher. There are lots of fleas.
Also, you should make your zoom in on your text.
Yep. So you can see there's some fleas with a bunch of zeros at the beginning. And then there are other fleas with a bunch of ones at the beginning.
Yes, so they had to develop different keys.
These are cat fleas. These are dog fleas.
So you got speciation amongst the fleas, for sure.
Yeah, and it's maintaining, even though they can migrate to the other host, it's lethal to go to the other host because they have a bad match. So we have basically coevolution resulting in effectively speciation.
And this is interesting too, because this is what we talked about with our other thing where we give them the pressure, the switch cost, right? And then we take it away, but you can't because it's already hard coded. And you've done another thing, which we talked about doing the multi-locus keys, right? Because right now we're just doing zeros and ones, and that's an easy flip. But if it's controlled by, like, as soon as I'm seeing now what you were talking about with the multi-locus, how much of a difference that makes, because it gives you a really unique key, right? You can't just flip one bit, right? You've got to flip a bunch to do the other thing. So it's a commitment phylogenetically.
One more thing. We were looking at the dogs at 16,000, and they all kind of look the same. They all started with ones.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at dogs at 28,000 generations, and they're all over the place, right? We got some here with some zeros. We got one. Now they're mostly ones because there's no selection against this, but there's nothing maintaining it. When we look at 16,000, first of all, there were way less dogs. There were like 200 dogs. Now there's like 700.
Sure,
dogs.
sure.
But the genomes are way more variable here because selection isn't keeping them anywhere. So we're seeing like the whole gambit.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, dude, we got to talk more about this. And we got to set up our next meeting with Mike and Maria. But let me run so I get to my meeting with Mike on time. Appreciate everybody for watching along. I'll be back live on Pocket Locker 86 after my meeting with Mike. Cliff, go ahead and swing throughout the week if you want to just drop in and chat more and kick it about some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'll well, you know.
Yeah, I know you're around, but otherwise,
you gotta keep working on this thing. Go, but tell Mike that I got the thing running and I have some preliminary.
Oh
results.
Yeah, exactly. And then do me another favor, Cliff. Write this down: Gin and Truth on YouTube.
Oh, I looked them up.
Gin and Truth on YouTube. Yeah. So I'm gonna start hosting a show with him this weekend. Super excited about it. Check him out. I think you'll love his content. All right, guys. I'll see you in a little bit. Thanks, Cliff.
Later.